As we enter the finale of this retrospective, I find it quite fitting that I get to once again gush about my favorite game in the series, Final Fantasy VII. What can I say that everyone else doesn't already know? Final Fantasy VII is one of the most important video games ever made, a trendsetter that defined the genre and completely changed how people view JRPGs. The gameplay, fantastic. The characters, iconic. The music, unforgettable. Playing it for the first time was one of the greatest experiences I've ever had in gaming, and I'm still gushing about it after 25 years. It just came out in the right place at the right time. Lightning in a bottle, something that may never be duplicated ever again. I already made a video about it if you need a refresher, but to me, Final Fantasy VII is perfection. Sorta. Okay, look, as much as I love this game, I can't really deny that out of every mainline entry in the series, this one has aged the worst in terms of visuals. The graphics were cutting edge in 1997, seamlessly integrated pre-rendered cutscenes, fantastic animations, epic summons that were doing things you had never seen before. It was phenomenal, it truly was. But here's one of the game's pre-renders of Cloud Strife. Looks cool, huh? Now let's see the real deal. Everyone in the game looks like a Lego figure. No facial features, weird Popeye arms, and Aerith's dress makes it look like she's cosplaying as the Michelin Man. It was the first 3D Final Fantasy, a product of its time. They did what they could, but not everyone wants to look at blocky puppets from an isometric viewpoint where it's hard to even tell what you can interact with, you know? I've always liked it as a cultural snapshot of where RPGs were in 1997, but I'm very much in the minority. Every time I'd ever watch someone play FF7 on the internet, they're almost always using mods, visual updates to make all of the character models look a little less goofy and more in line with their CG renders. It also doesn't help that the game lived on in other media. This is the most popular game in the series, so of course Square Enix was gonna milk it for all it's worth. Kingdom Hearts, Advent Children, Dirge of Cerberus, Crisis Core, Dissidia, all of these things put the characters in much higher fidelity. And not only does everyone look better, but we're also hearing them speak for the first time ever. Apparently Sephiroth is a member of NSYNC. Who knew? While all of this was great fan service, it was also a source of great envy. Because you look at the cutscenes and you look at the gameplay, and man, why can't the original be like this? And then E3 2005 happens. The Sony press conference comes on and they finally unveil the PlayStation 3. And to show just how powerful this new console was going to be, they completely remade the opening to Final Fantasy VII. Aerith had never looked better, Cloud had never looked better, Midgar had never looked better. Everyone got so damn excited until they realized that this was not an announcement. This was merely a tech demo and nothing more. Why would you do that, Square? I knew so many people who bought a PS3 purely because they thought the remake was gonna be on it. And instead, the poor bastards got Final Fantasy XIII. But ever since 2005, you went to a comment section, a forum, a Twitter thread, you'd see the same question asked over and over again. When are they gonna remake Final Fantasy VII? Where is the Final Fantasy VII remake? Every year, people kept expecting Square to finally pull the trigger, only to be massively disappointed. God, does anyone remember in 2014 when the PlayStation Experience happened and out came Shinji Hashimoto?
17 long years ago.
The crowd went nuts. They were so sure. Oh, it's happening. They're finally doing it. They're porting the original to PS4. Did he really need a stage presentation for that? You can play FF7 on the Vita. This isn't new! At a time when the 13 trilogy was turning people away, when the original 14 was a disaster, when 15 still wasn't out yet, it was rough being a Final Fantasy fan. We just wanted that one thing we've been waiting over a decade for. And then, E3 2015.
The reunion at hand may bring joy. It may bring fear. But let us embrace whatever it brings. For they are coming back. At last, the promise has been made.
They finally pulled the trigger at long last. I never thought I would see the day. Seeing all these fans lose their shit online, the collective fangasm that transpired, it was something special, man. But you know, I'm not gonna lie, I was skeptical. Trailers are one thing, but execution is another. Because this is a remake of their most popular game, the one thing people have been requesting for years and years and years. And if it played like Final Fantasy XIII, then it was all for nothing. I didn't want the characters to be as dry and robotic as they were in Advent Children. I didn't want the combat to be as easy as 15. This is still the same company that takes 5 years to release a game after announcing it. There were no guarantees with modern-day Square Enix. So I waited with bated breath until eventually the game came out in April of 2020. And I've never been so happy to be so wrong. This game exceeded every one of my expectations. And I know I'm a little biased because I love the original so much, but hey, I didn't like the compilation. I will not give you a pass simply for being in the same universe. But the remake? This is the best single-player Final Fantasy in the last 20 years, and it's not even close. For the first time in a long time, Square Enix has made a game that's at the top of the mountain in gameplay, visuals, and storytelling. I loved it so much that it was my 2020 Game of the Year, eclipsing such contenders as Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2, Hades, and even Doom Eternal. I'm serious, I loved the game that much. I was glued to the TV screen, on the edge of my seat, unable to put the controller down. I don't think I'm willing to say that it's perfection, but goddamn is it close. This retrospective is ending on a high note, which makes me really happy. And now, I'm gonna tell you why. Like before, I will be spoiling everything about the game, and that includes the original title as well as I will be making direct comparisons. Keep in mind though that if you've only played the PS1 game, there are still surprises in the remake, and the experience will be drastically ruined if you choose to listen to me before playing the game yourself. You have been warned, I have a lot to say about the new content. But if you're still here, then let's do it. The last game in the retrospective, Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, being a remake, this game has a near-identical storyline to the original, but I'm still going to give the basic setup because I think it's important to give a refresher on this universe and what it's all about. Our story begins in the giant megacity of Midgar. Midgar is the main hub of operations for the Shinra Electric Power Company, a conglomerate that basically runs the entire planet with its military, its vast technology, and is the sole dominant force when it comes to Mako distribution. Mako being an energy source that comes from deep beneath the planet's surface. This energy has improved the lives of many, but one group residing in Midgar doesn't quite see it that way. Enter Avalanche, freedom fighter eco-terrorists who have boarded a train to infiltrate one of the city's major Mako reactors. Their members? A girl named Jessie, 2 guys named Biggs and Wedge, and their leader, an aggressive and charismatic man named Barrett Wallace, a Mr. T lookalike who replaced his handicapped arm with a freaking machine gun! One that seems to have unlimited ammo, not that I'm complaining. And Avalanche is joined by the game's main character, a mercenary who used to be one of the top soldiers in Shinra's army, Cloud Strife. No introduction needed because he's still the poster child for what people think of when they think of JRPGs. He's still got the spiky hair, the long buster sword, and he's still legitimately one of the coolest characters ever. Avalanche is going after Shinra because, as Barrett puts it, Mako isn't just an energy source.
Mako is the lifeblood of our world. The hell you think's gonna happen when it's all gone, huh? Answer me! You gonna stand there and pretend you can't hear the planet crying out in pain? I know you can!
You really hear that?
Damn straight I do!
Get help.
Avalanche is successful. They set up a bomb in the reactor, which sets off a gigantic explosion that not only destroys the pumps, it also causes massive collateral damage that hurts enemies and civilians alike. But as far as Barrett is concerned, there's no going back. The ends justify the means. Cloud, however, doesn't care about Avalanche's ideology. He may not have any love for the Shinra, but he only tagged along for 2 reasons: the money, and also as a personal favor to another member of the group, a woman named Tifa, one of Cloud's childhood friends from his hometown of Nibelheim. She was present when Cloud made the decision to join the soldier program, where he hoped to become a great legendary warrior. Just like the greatest soldier, a man named Sephiroth.
You weren't thinking of leaving Midgar anytime soon, were you?
Well, seems this old friend of mine's in a tight spot. Long time ago I said I'd be there for her. Made a promise. So...
Can't say this is quite what I had in mind when I put that on you way back when.
So to make Tifa happy, Cloud sticks around and finds himself heading to another reactor. The second mission hits a bit of a snag, however, as Cloud, Barret, and Tifa find themselves encountering the president of the Shinra Company on the way out. Via hologram, President Shinra explains that this was all a trap to frame Avalanche, and then he summons a giant robot to kill them. Our heroes successfully defeat the machine, but this causes a massive explosion, which rocks Cloud and leaves him hanging on the ledge. He can't maintain his grip, however, so he falls to the lower sections of Midgar, and surely to his demise. Lucky for him, though, he crashes through the roof of a church and ends up landing on a soft flower bed.
He lives. Finally awake, are we?
It's here that Cloud gets acquainted with a flower girl named Aerith, a woman who secretly belongs to a long-lost line of people known as the Ancients. Special humans who can form connections with the planet's spirits, which is to say that yes, Aerith can hear voices in her head. I still can't do that Randy Orton joke. This is why I watch AEW now. Anyway, it's because of this lineage that the Shinra want to capture Aerith and use her power. In fact, as soon as Cloud arrives, they're already being hounded by the Turks, a special task group that deals in kidnapping, assassination, and whatever matters that are most urgent.
And who are you?
He's my bodyguard. And a soldier. Pretty cool, huh?
What class?
First.
If you're gonna bullshit me, at least try to make it believable.
After fending off these pricks, Cloud decides to regroup with Avalanche, but Aerith is adamant that she helped guide him back to their home in Sector 7. Despite Cloud's attempts to sneak off without her, she joins his journey against his will.
Why?
Because I'm not sick of you yet.
Lead on, then.
After regrouping with Tifa and following her to a sketchy wall market, Cloud discovers that Avalanche has been compromised. Shinra knows that their members are hiding in Sector 7, so in a callous attempt to get rid of them for good, they plan to blow up the supports holding up Midgar's higher plate, effectively crushing everything that lives there. President Shinra and his executives know that there will be innocent casualties, but they just don't care. So if you had doubts that Shinra was evil, this pretty much solidifies it. Cloud and friends are too late. Avalanche is helpless against the attack and cannot stop the Turks from setting off the bomb. And to make matters worse, Aerith manages to get captured in the confusion after she rescues Barrett's daughter Marlene and brings her to safety. Grabbing a nearby crane, Cloud, Barret, and Tifa barely manage to escape as the plate falls. Tons of innocent people are killed thanks to this careless devastation.
Biggs! Wedge! Jesse! God damn it! God damn you all!
Beyond the obvious tragedy, Cloud feels personally responsible for getting Aerith involved, and Barret, thankful to her for saving his daughter, feels he owes her a debt as well. And so the remaining 3 members of Avalanche go on a risky suicide mission to infiltrate Shinra HQ and rescue her themselves. And just in the nick of time, because Shinra's head of science research, a creepy batshit scientist named Professor Hojo, has some very fucked up designs for our flower girl.
Simply put, we could have the Ancient reproduce. In the absence of a second specimen, we would need to identify an alternative mate. I would start with candidates from Soldier.
Oh, thank God. He just wants Aerith to have sex with people. I mean, yeah, that's still really screwed up and horrible, but, could have been so much worse. Oh, God. Spying on the executives, our heroes also discovered that the reason they've captured Aerith at all is to find the Promised Land, a part of the planet that supposedly is an abundant source of Mako energy, one which they can tap forever and ever to create their grand utopia. Because if there's anything we can take away from life, It's that the rich always want to be richer. Anywho, the gang managed to save Aerith from Hojo, and they also managed to find a strange creature.
So what the hell is it?
A fascinating question.
Did it just talk?
I am that which you see before you. Nothing more. I'd appreciate it if we simply left it at that. Agreed?
One of Hojo's other captures, this talking lion was given the name Red 13, and he definitely doesn't want to go back in his cage, so he asks to tag along with the group. Going further into the lab, however, Cloud discovers something familiar from his past.
What is that?
Genova.
Mother. Together, we will reclaim our world.
Cloud?
A touching reunion.
Oh my god, it's Sephiroth! This definitely didn't happen in the original. Yes, Sephiroth, the legendary soldier that Cloud idolized, is now here in Shinra HQ. He manages to break the creature Genova out of its container, and the two head up the building, leaving a purple ooze trail. Our heroes follow along, catching up to the man as he murders President Shinra with his katana. And then the dude manages to fly away. Ooh.
Get your man.
He got away.
But the president being killed doesn't really matter because he is immediately replaced by his son, Rufus Shinra. And Rufus, well, we don't really know if he's better or worse than his dad. The characters immediately start running for the exit as soon as he lands, and there's not much more to say about the guy. But finally, with Shinra taken aback and an opening to leave, our heroes escape the building in style. And they manage to make it to the outskirts of Midgar itself. Sephiroth may have done a number on Shinra, but Cloud knows that deep down, his return can only be a bad thing. Because the Sephiroth he knows only wants to kill, to destroy, to make this planet die as his mother intended. So everyone decides to leave Midgar and track down the silver-haired swordsman, because it's up to them to stop him. It's up to them to save the world. And that is the synopsis of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Not the setup, the synopsis. Something that I didn't mention in the intro was that not long after the remake was announced, Square Enix added that the game's story would be episodic. It would be quite a daunting task to recreate everything from the original game with high fidelity. All the voice acting, all the motion capture, all of the towns and cities that are a part of this world. I mean, it would be a Herculean task for sure. So to preserve their sanity and get these games out before we're old and gray, they are being released in parts. So if you pick up the remake, you are not going to Calm. You are not going to Costa del Sol. You will not see the Gold Saucer, or Cid, or Vincent. You are not going to cry in the Forgotten City. You will not battle the giant kaiju weapons, and you will not buckle from the weight of that giant meteor in the sky. The credits do indeed roll after Midgar. It's funny, because back when I did the original game's video, I told the entire Midgar section as the setup. It's only 4 or 5 hours of content. There's so much left to see after that. But don't fear, because that doesn't mean that this game is super short. Remake is indeed a $60 AAA game that has the exact same length as any other Final Fantasy. It will take you a whopping 40 hours to reach the end, and everything has been expanded in a major way. The train graveyard was only 2 screens in the original game. Now it's an hour-long dungeon. Before going on the second bombing mission, you can do side quests as a mercenary and will infiltrate an explosives factory with Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge. There are new characters, new bosses, new scenarios that were never in the original. It's a complete game that actually has a final boss that feels as epic as it should. So I guess the big question is, why is this game called Final Fantasy VII Remake and not Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1? There actually is an answer for this, but I'll be saving that for the end of the video. Don't you worry, I have a lot to say about the whispers. So I guess the one thing I really wanted this game to get right was the characters. The dialogue, the way they bounce off of each other, the weirdness. It's what separates it from every other Final Fantasy game, giving it such a clear identity. And in the mid-2000s, with the spin-offs and the compilation media, it just didn't feel like Final Fantasy VII. Instead, it was just a new Square Enix product that happened to have characters with the exact same names. I remember when Advent Children was announced. Me and my friends were so damn excited. Finally, a real Final Fantasy movie! The trailers were showing off all these badass action scenes and sword fights, and it looked like the coolest thing in the world. Then we saw it, and while some of my friends were satisfied, I was just like, really? That sucked. I didn't get any enjoyment out of this thing. The color scheme is just so drab. Everything is brown and gray. The characters all look morose. Nobody dresses like the NPCs of 7 did. And I also think there's a bit of a disconnect in that the original game was so clearly anime. Whether it was the concept art or the models themselves, it just wasn't supposed to be photorealistic, you know? But hey, everything looks a lot more real now, and I guess some fans will argue that the visuals are supposed to match and capture the tone. Because after all, the world's now suffering from a disease known as geostigma, of which Cloud is infected. Things are the worst they've ever been. I mean, besides that whole life-destroying meteor thing. He spends the whole movie being melancholy, avoiding his friends, moping about the past, and doubting his ability to be useful. Which to me is a complete slap in the face to all the character development he went through. Look, Cloud is absolutely a basket case. The guy never believed he was good enough. He doubted that Tifa liked him, he had no conviction to make it as a soldier, and it isn't really until the Nibelheim incident where his character metamorphosizes into the Cloud we all know and love. He single-handedly defeated Sephiroth without Mako powering him. Adopting Zack's persona, the guy gains a confidence and determination that makes his power legitimate. And while he certainly falters whenever Sephiroth is involved, thanks to Tifa, his identity gets carved out and the guy becomes his best self. No longer does he doubt that he can beat Sephiroth, he goes in with clear determination and kicks his ass. No pithy retort, no ominous exit, the bastard is just in total shock, and then he evaporates right in front of our eyes. And considering how close Cloud and Tifa were by the end, it just seemed like it would be smooth sailing now. He and his friends are personally responsible for saving the world. But no, let's make him revert back to doubting everything he does and wallowing in misery.
Maybe something will happen that can never unhappen. That scares you, doesn't it? But you need to think about now, really take it in. Look at you, you think you've got it so damn hard.
Our sins ever forgiven?
I've never tried.
Blah, blah, blah. Emo dialogue is emo. Look, I'm not saying people can't get depressed after great achievements in their lives. But this is a fantasy movie that is returning to a universe we all grew up with, so maybe I want it to feel like that same universe. Hell, you could have had Cloud help the little boy Denzel cope with geostigma because he knows what it's like to feel powerless. He could have been the shining beacon of hope that saves the kid from being one of the Advent Children. You know, like the name of the movie. Also, even on a fan service level, this movie's pretty lame. The party doesn't team up until the big fight at the end, so you barely see Yuffie or Sid or Red 13. It's so weird that Marlene is a central character to the plot, and yet Barrett is nowhere to be seen.
I just thought I couldn't care for myself, let alone anyone else.
How you supposed to look after your family if you can't even look after yourself?
If I'm having more fun watching the cutscenes of Final Fantasy X-2, then something's gone wrong. Now okay, the movie sucks, but it's also the glue that sticks everything together so you can't escape it.
Once I get rid of you, the darkness will go away.
That darkness comes from your own dark memories. You turn your back on the present and live in the past.
I don't want you involved.
You mean you don't want me there when you go away again? No matter how far away you are. Once you find your light, I'm sure it will lead you back here again.
This dialogue is so bad. But it's like, Cloud being a loner and running away is a carryover from Advent Children. The clothing, the voice actors, it's just tapping into that movie and putting it into Kingdom Hearts. Which is funny because he comes across as more of a loner than Squall from Final Fantasy VIII. And even in something like Dissidia, The writing just fails spectacularly by being faux intellectual with lots of wooden performances. The characters are just so dry. I kinda understand Aerith being treated with such reverence in Advent Children because it's a story that takes place after her death. But even in Kingdom Hearts and Crisis Core, she only functions as a heavenly maiden, a pure angel for fans to fawn over, as opposed to the teasing firecracker from the original. I have always felt that between her and Tifa, Aerith was the one most likely to be aggressive, the most likely to joke around. But there's none of that spunky personality here, and I just think they romanticize the character far too much. Even on a cosmetic level, it just doesn't work. The outfits in Dirge of Cerberus are so dumb. Reeve was one of the Shinra executives. He wore a suit like anyone in the modern-day corporate system would. So why the hell is he wearing a blue robe with a giant zipper now? Is he a black mage? Did he create Scientology? What are you doing? You got these villains with leather outfits and medieval battle armor, and... Is this guy a rock troll or something? Why is his head shaped like that? I can't even with Nero. A straitjacket, weird bone wings that shoot guns, his mouth is covered and yet he talks just fine. And those are just the villains. Tetsuya Nomura, what is the justification for Shalua Rui? She looks like she's ready for a night on the town, like she's absolutely 100% looking to get railed. She's supposed to be a scientist with major sister issues. Final Fantasy VII was the first mainline game to ditch the typical fantasy setting. There were no castles and dragons. It drifted from the medieval for a universe that felt like our own. Business suits, biker jackets, jeans and t-shirts, dresses and aprons, baseball caps. I mean, it wasn't anything crazy. It helped us believe in a world that could be conquered by a corporation, one where natural resources were precious, where the underbelly of crime and poverty was believable. And then you wiped your ass with it by over-designing everything and making it extra futuristic for no goddamn good reason. Dirge of Cerberus still sucks, by the way. I replayed it in preparation for this video, and in no way is it a guilty pleasure. So many endless conversations from the most emotionally vacant character ever. Wow, so funny, much entertainment, blah. Clearly, I'm not a fan of the compilation. Crisis Core was definitely the best of them, but I still don't love it enough to recommend to people. The gameplay was okay, the music was forgettable, and I still think the story suffers when it's directed at the new content. I don't care about Angeal, or Hollander, or goddamn Genesis. Hey, I got a great idea for a villain. Let's make a lamer Sephiroth, only he's played by a J-pop celebrity. I didn't love it, but I'll at least say this. Zack was fantastic.
I've recommended you for first.
Angeal! Oh, I love you, man! Angeal!
Seriously, it's just refreshing having sat through the entire compilation to see a character finally pop off the screen. He's got a sense of humor, his optimism and excitement is contagious, and I love how he seems to find the other characters just as annoying as I do.
What is it you're after?
World domination.
That's not even funny, man.
Do you fly away now? To a world that abhors you and I?
Shut up!
All that awaits you.
Shut up! I'm warning
is a
you!
somber morrow.
I mean, let's be honest here, Zack was barely a character in the original game. He mainly served as a function for Cloud to question his identity. He doesn't talk when he's introduced, he doesn't talk when Tifa's fixing Cloud's memories, and he never says a word when he meets his demise. The one time he did have dialogue, it was just to set up why Cloud thinks he's a mercenary. Zack's death was quick and brutal. Caught off guard, pumped full of lead. So I gotta give credit. With barely anything to work with, Crisis Core created a very compelling character. He and Cloud were done justice, and the ending where he dies is very powerful. So you know, Crisis Core is fine, but ultimately I was pretty let down by all this extra material. I probably didn't have to dive so deep into this topic, but this is me remembering Final Fantasy. It just feels appropriate to finally dish on something that's been taking up space in my head for over 10 years. These were the doubts that kept me from getting excited for this remake. I could see Square Enix getting this wrong because they already have so often before. So imagine my surprise.
It's over!
That's my line.
When they nailed it.
When did you get so thoughtful?
Guy can change. Has been 5 years.
It is night and day comparing Remake to the compilation. My god. For the first time in a long time, I get to see Cloud Strife actually emote. He smiles, he laughs, he jokes around.
I got an idea. Frontal assault, guns blazing. Make for a good story.
Why'd we bring you along again?
Not only are some people gonna find him charming and suave as hell, but the guy is also incredibly cool.
Shinra knows better than to stick its nose in my boss's business.
Like I give a shit.
Oh, that's so fucking good! I just love how many layers there are to the character this time around. We get to see him start out as a cold, calculated mercenary who always thinks pragmatically. A dude who thinks it's absolutely a-okay to murder someone in case they spill the beans. Something that genuinely scares Tifa a little because this isn't the guy she grew up with. But he can't hide his true self, and it comes out in really awkward ways.
What are you, 20-something?
First.
Huh?
Soldier first class. Doesn't go into the 20s.
The hell you talking about? I mean your age, not your goddamn rank.
We know that Cloud is a guy who puffs his chest out. He's determined to prove he's a badass, even if everyone else has a hard time buying it.
Look, I'm involved in things. Dangerous things.
Oh, I'm sure you are. So?
As the game goes on, the emotional armor he surrounds himself starts to crack more and more, and it's just nice to see something other than stoic depression, you know? This is a guy who can panic, a guy who gets mad, someone who enjoys doing the right thing. And I don't think this performance would have been nearly as good if it wasn't for his new voice actor, Cody Christian. Ever since 2005, the Advent Children voice cast has stuck around, reprising their roles for games like Dissidia NT and World of Final Fantasy. And honestly, the prospect of Steve Burton returning to do the remake never sat right with me. He always gave Cloud this older, gruff voice that doesn't fit the character. Even with good voice direction, I just don't know that it would work. I mean, look at Mina Suvari.
It doesn't matter. This is great. Everyone's together again.
She's a legitimate actress. She was so great and natural in things like American Beauty and Loser and Spung, but Square made it seem like she had no idea what she was doing. Aerith could have been so much more natural, but instead they told her to act like she was hopped up on painkillers. Naturally, I didn't want the old cast to come back. I wanted fresh blood. And thankfully, Remake recast everybody. For the better, because whenever I think of these characters' voices now, I immediately default to this game.
Monsters instinctively target weaker prey.
You'd better watch out then, Cloud. Gotcha.
You're killing me here.
Aerith is perfect. The sweet flower girl of the slums, perfectly cast with Brianna White's voice. So much kindness and beauty, along with that firecracker personality that keeps her from being a bland JRPG maiden.
Seriously, Les, she's not half bad. With a little work, I bet she'd clean up real nice.
Cloud, requesting permission to kill.
And then you got Barrett, who's always been a complex character because he's a leader and a father and one really angry dude. He is dedicated to fighting for his cause, and he's not going to let anything get in his way.
A whole lot of normal people with families and friends work for Shinra.
A good man who serves a great evil is not without sin. He must open his eyes to the truth, that his corporate masters are profiting from the planet's pain.
They nailed his charisma, they nailed his intensity, and the scenes with him and Marlene are just too damn precious.
The hell you think you're doing, scaring my daughter like that?
Daddy says never talk to strangers.
You know what else good girls do? They go to bed on time.
But I'm not tired. I want to talk some more, Daddy.
Marlene is the cutest little girl in the world. Whenever I was playing the original, I never really thought of how precious she must be. A lack of voice acting and simplistic visuals definitely don't capture the same energy. The benefit of making a remake. Oh, and if I'm going to talk about enhanced experiences, I mean, Tifa Lockhart.
So?
Pretty lady! I'm so sorry that I have to be weird right now, but Tifa is the most beautiful video game character I have ever seen in my life. It's no secret I've always thought she and Cloud were the best couple in any Final Fantasy game, but my god! Square Enix and their visual department are performing sorcery! She shouldn't look and sound this good. She still kicks ass, she's still a bright optimist with no mean bone in her body, and she is still the ideal girl next door that we all want in our lives.
Beautiful.
You said it, Cloud. In general, I'm pretty satisfied with how every single character is handled. Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge are great. Don Corneo is as sleazy as ever. And oh my god, Hojo! He's such a detestable piece of shit! They nailed it! I like that Scarlet has her own Shinra grunt who crawls on the ground, following her every move, just in case she needs a footrest. Palmer spending his time at the Honeybee Inn chasing the girls with an oversized net. The Turks! My boys! They're so good! And that's not even getting into all of the new characters who are excellent as well. It's refreshing to be playing a Final Fantasy game where the entire cast is entertaining. A game that treats all of its enemies and civvies with the same reverence as everything else. And they all bounce off of each other so well, too.
I wouldn't celebrate just yet.
Man, you need to lighten up. Hell, you might even try smiling. On second thought, maybe frowning suits you better.
There's so much good character work here. That Barrett and Tifa are in the same group, but they clearly have different lines that they're willing to cross. Aerith and Tifa are like the best of friends as soon as they meet. Cloud definitely has chemistry with both of them, and it's up to the player to decide who he ships best with. But maybe, just maybe, the two girls don't need him.
I'll buy stuff for the bar, decorations, coasters.
Can I come?
You'd better.
Then it's a date.
Cloud can carry all our stuff.
He'll be our pack chocobo.
They spared no expense in making Midgar a believable, living, breathing world. When Cloud's fighting off Shinra grunts in Chapter 2, getting acquainted with Sector 7, walking through the streets of the Upper Plate, surveying the junk around Aerith's church, being dazzled by the sights and sounds of Wall Market, nothing feels half-assed, nothing feels compromised. Everything is exactly as I remember, but with better detail than ever before. Even the clothing! People wearing suits, biker jackets, green dresses and aprons, purple vests and bow ties. They didn't over-design it! They kept the fun simplicity of these characters and retained what made Final Fantasy VII so special. It's genuinely everything I wanted Remake to be, and I couldn't be happier. But of course, there is still one thing they need to get right above everything else, and that is the gameplay. From the get-go, it was revealed in 2015 that the remake would be an action RPG, straying from its turn-based roots. This was not a surprise to me because this is the direction that all of Final Fantasy has been going down. I mean, in many ways, Final Fantasy VII is almost bigger than Final Fantasy. It's the most popular game in the series, and just because someone likes this one, it doesn't mean they like FF9 or FF12 or FF15. Remake is their emergency glass game. This is the one project they can't fuck up. So what will appeal more? A turn-based game or an action game? Of course, we all know the answer to that. I already made my peace with the franchise's direction last video, and I don't want to repeat myself. Now that being said, the combat in this game is so fucking good that every future Final Fantasy game should be copying this template. This should be the Final Fantasy IV of today's generation. Something you keep for the game after, and the game after that, and the game after that, because it is just perfect. And it all has to do with how the ATB system is used. Look, I liked Final Fantasy XV well enough, but one of my major criticisms was that it was just too easy. Even on the normal difficulty, you could spam healing potions with reckless abandon. Using abilities like the Warp Strike was easy because you never ran out of MP, and the enemies you fought never required a real strategy beyond constant assault. It was still a playable game, but it never reached the heights of its previous titles. In 7 Remake, you start off as Cloud with his Buster Sword, and you just go to town on every goon you see. But when the fight begins, you can't use items or abilities. And that's because the ATB gauge has to fill up a certain amount before you're allowed to do so. This already solves the problem of spamming heals and makes defending and avoiding damage far more important. But it also encourages aggressive gameplay because you're not expected to hang back and wait for the gauge to fill. Attacking enemies fills the ATB gauge. Each successive strike that you deliver is letting you do something other than a basic attack. And besides the obvious magic materia that of course are in the game, Cloud has 2 unique skills in Braver and Focused Thrust. Braver used to be a limit break in the original, but now it serves in dealing heavy damage. And it's probably best to save it for when you stagger the enemy. Like the Final Fantasy XIII trilogy, VII Remake has a stagger system that requires your characters to stun enemies so you can deal more damage. If an enemy is weak to thunder, casting that magic is more than likely going to raise their stagger meter and may even put them in a pressured state. And that's where Cloud's Focused Thrust comes into play, because that skill is tailor-made to increase stagger damage. You perform it when they're pressured and boom! Now they're feeling 160% extra pain. This is the most opportune time to use any devastating skills like Braver, or even your Limit Break should it have built up during the fight. But at most, you're only allowed to carry 2 ATB skills at once, so sometimes you may find yourself conflicted. Do I use Focused Thrust on the pressured enemy, or do I throw a high potion on Tifa because she's taken too much damage? You only get so many chances with these skills, lest you want to build the ATB again. Being an action game, you can attack, you can dodge roll, you can block. Sometimes enemies are just going to hit you, so it might be better to shield the blow so you don't lose too much health. But the cool thing about Cloud is that he actually has 2 different fighting stances, Operator Mode and Punisher Mode. In Operator Mode, he does basic attacks and reduces the most damage. But in Punisher Mode, his strength is doubled while his movement speed goes down and his block is changed to a counter. Hold your sword up high, and when someone makes contact, kaboom! Cloud slashes back with big time damage and gets the drop on them. It feels so fucking great in one-on-one duels like with Roche and Reno, where you're just waiting for them to make the first move. Waiting for that strike makes you feel like you're in a samurai movie. It's so badass. The longer the game goes on, the more weapons you're going to be collecting. Whether you buy them in a shop or find them in a chest, these new toys will actually grant Cloud extra abilities. For example, the Iron Sword will allow Cloud to use Triple Slash, an ability that lets him deal damage to 3 different enemies with successive punishment. The Hard Edge will let Cloud use Infinity's End, an absolutely devastating finisher that uses 2 ATB bars. Mastering these skills increases your repertoire and makes the game that much more interesting to play. Cloud is incredible all by himself, but of course, he's not alone. Barret, Tifa, and Aerith are also part of the equation, and yes, you will play as them as well. The initial bombing mission is actually very interesting because it demonstrates how different the characters are, but also how necessary they'll be. Barret, of course, has his long-range Gatling gun. He can attack enemies from a distance, of which include turrets that are high on platforms. Cloud cannot reach these enemies without magic materia, and so it falls onto the player to switch to Barret and unleash hell. I always love using his overcharge move because it's separate from abilities and ATB, and it usually downs a turret in one single move. You get to the big Scorpion boss, and Cloud explains that the guy is weak to electricity. Barret happens to start off with Thunder Materia equipped, so you're going to need to switch to him and conserve his MP if you're going to stagger the enemy. Elemental weaknesses are important, so I always recommend keeping them on hand since you cannot change equipment during a battle. More often than not, they make things a lot easier than they initially appear. Choosing abilities is actually really cool because the action doesn't just pause like it did in FF15. Instead, it goes into super slow-mo, and the particle effects, the motion of the characters, it just looks so badass when you're thinking about your next action. Often you'll need to pause to direct the characters because while they will attack enemies alongside you and fill their ATB gauge, they will not use magic or skills unless you tell them to. Still, when everyone has built up 2 bars and you just staggered some mean mamma jamma, god damn is it satisfying to direct all of them to unleash total devastation.
You're done. Now you're
There! Let's pour on the paint!
You ain't going this way! I know it's stupid. Why I gotta kill all these men?
I just love how every character feels different but useful. Instead of whacking things with her staff like in the original, Aerith is now a ranged fighter who shoots magic missiles. Whereas Barret focuses on ranged offense, Aerith focuses on ranged defense, being able to spawn energy fields that let people cast spells twice or even gain a 3rd ATB bar. And Tifa is just the fastest character, one who deals out so many punches and juggles, so damn satisfying to play as she can get lots of ATB in no time at all. Plus her speed makes a difference with enemies like the flamethrower guys, who only get stunned when you destroy the pack on their back. Who can get behind them the quickest? Best girl, of course. One of my favorite things to do with her in the end game is True Strike, because it's one of the few skills in the game that actually raises stagger percentage. Because unlike the 13 trilogy, you can't normally get the damage higher than 160%. But building up ATB and spamming True Strike will make things hurt a hell of a lot more. I love that the strategies are so open-ended and that we have tons of customization options. One thing I didn't mention about the weapons you're going to be picking up is that they all have different builds. It's not a matter of, oh, this weapon has 20 extra strength and is just objectively better. In the original, once you found something better than the Buster Sword, you were never going to use it again. Oh, I know it's an honored memento, but it's still shittier than a spiked baseball bat. But in Remake, you actually upgrade the weapons you have with ability points that you earn from progressing the story. Sort of similar to the sphere grid from Final Fantasy X, you can choose whether you get extra strength, more magic defense, and even extra materia slots. The ability points are universal also, meaning if you get 30 points, that's 30 points for every weapon. No grinding or missing out on experience points, which I appreciate. But yeah, with the upgrades, you'll find that some weapons are good for raising health and defense, some are good for casting magic, some are glass cannons with absurd strength. It's not a matter of better, it's a matter of how you want them to feel. Barrett has very high HP and defense compared to everyone else, so I give him Big Bertha to increase his magic, and then he can be a very useful support character. The last to die, he can always buff the party. Amazingly, I still use the Buster Sword at the end of the game because I just prefer how it handles everything. Why am I putting so much thought into my setup? Because on normal mode, it is not a cakewalk. Would you believe that the Scorpion Sentinel, the first boss of the whole entire game, is actually pretty challenging? I was genuinely caught off guard the first time I took it on. This is a boss that loves to shoot homing missiles that you need to block. This is a boss that has a super quick damaging field that you can't really dodge if you're too close. A boss that puts up a barrier that won't go away unless you're using magic to hit its weak point. Keep in mind that you haven't had the chance to visit a shop, you only have so many items and MP. Oh, and did I mention that health and MP doesn't restore in between battles? Yeah, you actually gotta manage that. I knew tons of people who, because they weren't blocking, because they didn't know how to stagger, because they kept wasting ATB, just found the experience kind of rough and actually died on their first attempt. And they weren't newbie gamers, they're veterans who are just getting used to this game's system. And I gotta say, I love that! This is a far cry from the original game where the Scorpion was merely a tutorial boss and all you had to do was keep pressing attack. Blocking is important, character placement is important, knowing how to stagger and manage your party. You can't just brute force this game outside of easy mode. Hell, coming back, I actually got schooled on the way to the second reactor because I underestimated the missile launchers and flamethrower goons. I wasn't attacking the flame guys' backs, I wasn't using magic on the physically resistant machines, and I wasn't blocking things. Shit can go south really quick, but that's what makes it so much more interesting to play. Unlike Final Fantasy XIII, I'm not just mindlessly doing the same thing every single fight. What I really found impressive was the variety of the boss fights. That I can think of 6 different battles that are completely unique is a testament to how much thought was put into this game. One of my favorite battles is with Rude. He intercepts Cloud and Aerith as they head back to her place, and this dude is all kinds of interesting. For one thing, he's one of those bosses who has awareness of what character you're controlling. If you're controlling Aerith, he loves to incapacitate her, either by throwing sleeping gas or by karate chopping her right in the neck. For Cloud, he's very resistant to physical slashes and loves to do wrestling moves to the guy. I'm not kidding, Rude will uppercut the dude and proceed to grab his legs and spin him around like he's fucking Cesaro. And he also intentionally throws Cloud at Aerith, which is not good if you've been previously incapacitated. Rude is weak to wind magic, but he also gets knocked down a peg if Cloud performs Braver, which greatly reduces the chances of him grabbing you. It's so different from the Reno fight, which is a little simpler thanks to Cloud's Punisher mode, but the guy does release electric ball traps that you need to handle lest you want to take lots of damage. And they're both very different from the Rufus fight, where you can't slash at him normally because otherwise he'll counter with his shotgun. This feels very unique because you gotta read his animations, you need to counter his dog, and you gotta shoot magic on the guy anytime he reloads.
Think you got my number?
Not at all. You're making me sweat.
One ghost boss will constantly switch between physical and magical resistances while throwing furniture all over the place to knock you around. The Crab Warden has armor you need to whittle down while he electrifies the rails, requiring very specific placement for you to avoid. The Arsenal has special moves that you have to interrupt with magic, and crazy powerful energy beams that force you to hide behind pillars. Mix in some strict challenges with the Colosseum and simulators, an unlockable hard mode that throws you some curveballs, the game is just engaging from beginning to end. It's never too hard, it's always the right amount of difficulty. And when you hotkey certain commands to L1, you don't even have to pause the action all that much. Okay, let's dive kick Rude. Boom! He's pressured, let's switch to Cloud. Focus thrust. Focus thrust again! Oh, you're so screwed!
You're out.
God, that's so satisfying! I love the combat in this game, they nailed it! Another thing that sweeps you up as you're playing it is the incredible music. I mean, look, Final Fantasy VII has always had my favorite video game soundtrack ever of all time. As far as I'm concerned, it's the greatest score that Nobuo Uematsu has ever composed. And now that music has been updated. No longer using the PS1 sound chip, we have real instruments, full-on orchestras, multiple interpretations and variations. The battle theme! Good lord, there must be like 7 or 8 variations of this one track! Themes for when you're out of battle, themes for different stages of a boss fight, day themes, night themes, bonus jukebox tracks. I mean, have you actually looked at the full OST? Because they poured a ridiculous amount of effort into this. It is insane. But I don't just want to highlight the remixes. I have to give credit to Masashi Hamauzu, Misuto Suzuki, too many people to count, because along with all of these remixes, we also have a ton of original compositions. And honestly, if this was a completely new Final Fantasy game separate from 7, I would still say that the music is incredible. Genuinely, there's a lot of great stuff here. And the combat's great, presentation's amazing, the characters are so faithful. But how exactly do you make a 5-hour segment into its own full-fledged game? By adding lots of new material and completely stretching out events. Blowing up the reactor used to take 20 minutes. Now it takes an hour. Crashing through the church used to take 90 minutes. Now it's 8 hours! Oh yeah, this game wants to take its time. Square really didn't want this title to go anywhere outside of Midgar, so events that may have been a single screen of encounters are now a full-fledged action set piece with you being chased by helicopters and cut off by trucks. And look out, Cloud! It's the Huntsman! Going to Sector 7 in the original, you regrouped with Avalanche, caught up with Tifa, and then it was just decided that tomorrow you'd be bombing the second reactor. But in Remake, there is so much in between. He spends the next day not heading off on a mission, but instead reacquainting with Tifa as they perform odds and ends in town. This is like the first time ever that Cloud is actually being a proper mercenary. He never took extra jobs in the original, so it's fun to see him truly interact with clients and show off how capable he really is.
I'll bet a lot of people are talking about you right now.
Nothing I've done around here has been all that special, though.
I love seeing this aspect of Cloud because it's another great hint that his past doesn't add up. If he's truly been doing this for a while, the mundanity of mercenary work shouldn't be a surprise. Now, helping out people is completely optional. These are all side quests. You don't have to help the little girl find her kitty cats, you don't have to take out the Doom Rats, you don't have to help the weird little science boy with his experiments.
Performing physical analysis. Sizable weapon, excellent cardiovascular health and impressive lung capacity. Perfectly balanced muscle and bone structure.
Jerry Birkin, what are you doing here? Sorry, just making a reference to Resident Evil 2, which, sidebar, isn't it interesting that FF7 Remake came out now of all times, when PlayStation nostalgia has resurfaced in a major way? Resident Evil, Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon, Medieval. My childhood is back, all grown up alongside me. Very strange. But anyway, this NPC is Chadley, a Shinra intern who can give you unique materia if you perform certain tasks for him. This includes summon materia, as he'll actually make you participate in virtual reality combat sims to earn their power. Yeah, you actually get to fight against Shiva, Ifrit, Bahamut, and Leviathan. And when you win, their power is yours. Summons are interesting. How they work is sort of a hybrid between FF12 and FF15. Every now and then in battles, a summon gauge will appear, and when it's filled all the way, you're allowed to call them down. Instead of being a one-hit kill, they simply join the party for a limited amount of time. And whenever you build up ATB, you can even make the summons do special commands. Thankfully, they don't replace anyone in the party, and even if the summoner gets KO'd, the summon will leave by doing their ultimate move, be it Hellfire, Diamond Dust, or Mega Flare. I love that Chocobo and Mog are still a summon, that's amazing. Although what in Christ's name happened to these two?
Good lord, gigantism.
I'm so happy about the materia system. I was worried with Remake that they were going to dumb it down, but luckily that wasn't the case. Spells are still single target unless you group them with blue magnify materia. If Barret and Tifa leave the party, you can still give their materia to Aerith with all of its progress intact. You can only equip so much based on your weapon and armor. Exactly as it was, rest my beating heart. Anyway, sorry for the long derail, but what I was getting at is that there are many optional side quests, but thanks to the linear nature of the story, you only get one shot to do them. If you choose to forward the plot, you are locking yourself out of certain bonuses and rewards. Midgar was always a linear section, where party composition was never really up to you. For a good chunk of the middle, it's only Cloud and Aerith. Because you're spending the whole time trying to return to Sector 7, it would be kinda weird if you could magically warp back to redo side quests. Especially when everything gets crushed to smithereens. But there are incentives to do every side quest besides the obvious Gil and materia. I mean, sometimes the monsters you go out to fight make the whole thing worthwhile, but I also just love what it does for Cloud's character.
There's no denying you're the real deal. Not like these idiots with their excuses.
They're just doing their jobs. Can't expect them to be at your beck and call.
Heard you were ex-Shinra. Guess I shouldn't be surprised you'd go to bat for your old buddies.
One of the reasons the side quests in 13 and 15 sucked so much was that there was no story there. Help the rock zombies, collect some toads, find some dog tags. It was artificial progress that had nothing to say. But when Cloud helps pull the people of Midgar out of their bleak situations, not only does this give you insight into how the city works, but it also shows you what kind of man Cloud is.
You guys, the Toad King's back.
The Toad King? A weird, creepy monster we've seen near the hideout lately.
But if we ask any other grown-ups for help, they'll find out about the hideout, and that'll be it.
I'll do it for 3 gil.
Huh?
I'm offering a special discount right now on Toad King jobs.
Seeing him be a kind hero is actually endearing. A fun detail is that every time you pass by NPCs, they're always saying things to each other. And the more you side quest, the conversations start to shift to that awesome merc with the big sword. In Wall Market, your generosity is actively rewarded as the people there help you out through word of mouth. In the original game, Aerith always picks out this red dress when she's going to go volunteer for Don Corneo. No way to change that, that's just how it was. But if Cloud is being a shitty merc and ignoring everyone's problems, the character Madame M won't feel particularly motivated to get Aerith something classy. And so...
Alright, you're up. Aerith, what are you wearing?
I know, right? It's bad. Like, super bad.
But if you did go out of your way, you'll get to see why Aerith is the second most beautiful video game character I've ever seen.
Get out of the way! Quit talking! Move it! Move it! Come on!
This dress is so gaudy and impossible to move in.
Yeah.
Cloud?
Excuse me.
And it's not just her either. Doing every side quest in Sector 7 makes it so Tifa wants to take a break, and she invites Cloud into her apartment. And after staring into my eyes and making me want to smooch her, she actually asks Cloud out on a date and asks him what kind of outfit would suit her best. And based on your decision, she might wear the original dress she had before, or she may wear something a little more exotic. You actively change things and get more screen time with the ladies, and this is especially important because the remake brings back the affinity system. In the original game, you actually got to decide what Cloud said in conversations, and this actually affected what party members he was closest with. This sets up the gold saucer moment where Cloud could go on a date with Tifa, Aerith, Yuffie, or Barrett. Which partner you ended up with was based entirely on your input throughout the game. If you told Aerith that Tifa was your girlfriend, there's a good chance you'll be closer to Tifa, you know? Remake does this too. It's really up to the player if they want to be a dick out of nowhere.
5 then.
Please, that's not nearly enough. Besides, I clearly said it was on the... You're trying to get rid of me for 5 lousy gil.
Oh no, we all fell in Don Corneo's pit. I wonder who I should check on first, Aerith or Tifa. Oh! But all of this pays off so beautifully after the Sector 7 plate falls. Because while resting in Aerith's house, Cloud will actually go outside to bond with whoever's out there. And they can be Tifa, Barrett, and yes, even Aerith. She's not really there, she's kinda telepathically speaking to Cloud in his sleep, which was a thing in the original. But these scenes? Genuinely better than the gold saucer moments. As a Cloud Tifa shipper, this game has made the two far closer than they ever have been before. And whether he's telling her she's beautiful, whether they're sharing a moment after bailing from a train, I mean, it's just so great to see this connection finally realized on screen. At this point, Tifa's distraught over what's happened to Sector 7, and to finally see Cloud not be so distant and actually reciprocate her feelings, to hug her back as she cries in his arms. I mean, god damn, my heart skips a beat seeing these two realize how much they love each other. And if you prefer Cloud with Aerith, she gets the same amount of love and attention. So many cute moments between the two, feelings left unsaid. I can't even talk about the date scene because, well, there's a spoiler involved. But we'll get to that when we get to that.
Used to think you were a little shit with a big attitude and a bigger inferiority complex. Quite possibly the worst person I have ever met. But that was before I figured you out.
Deep down, you're a pretty nice guy.
This dialogue does not happen if you ignore side quests. And I love it for spelling out that Cloud is actually a sweet cupcake. Yes, I appreciate the extra gil and materia you get for doing side quests. Yes, I love the unique boss fights. But what it does for the storytelling and character interactions is just top-notch. I loved the side quests in this game, and I was kind of surprised it was such a conflicting issue with people. I won't deny that you're going to be running back and forth a lot completing these quests, but you know, at least when you finish one, you're given a prompt to return to the quest giver and instantly receive your reward. They're still optional. If you don't want to do them, then don't do them. At least they're skippable, unlike certain gameplay segments that pad out the adventure. So again, this game stretches things out to make this a complete RPG. Walking from Aerith's house to the wall market used to take 2 minutes. Now you gotta navigate through a collapsed expressway filled with tons of enemies, treasure chests, and even robotic hands that you need to operate for progress. The train graveyard is not just 2 screens to navigate, it's an entire dungeon with machinery to move, ghost children to follow, and yeah. Even climbing the plate and reaching Shinra HQ is this whole new thing with chase scenes and battles galore. I'm of 2 minds on the issue. Sometimes I found it perfectly paced and just didn't agree with people's criticism, and other times, yeah, that segment was unnecessary, I would have cut it out completely. You're most likely to be frustrated if you're used to the original, because I can understand having an expectation like, okay, I fought Don Corneo's pet, now we just have to quickly leave the sewers, and wait a minute, this is a full 45 minutes of gameplay? That's 43 minutes longer than it used to be! Knowing what you know, you expect the train graveyard to be just as long, so there's a fatigue that sets in. Your expectations can kill the mood. But using that particular instance, I can at least justify why it never bothered me. For one thing, it's following a big portion of gameplay where all you were doing was talking to people. Madame M's shenanigans, a fetch quest for Johnny, meeting Andrea Rodea, finally confronting the Don. It's wall-to-wall cutscenes, and at some point, I was starting to miss the combat. Which, for a second thing, is so friggin' fun that taking on new enemy types like the crabs and the trident ninja turtles was an absolute blast. It's so fun that I didn't even care that I was in a sewer level, you know? Combine that with some pretty fun cutscenes here and there, and I just never found myself bored. I think any good RPG has an ebb and flow to it. Yeah, the collapsed expressway had claw puzzles, but we've had a pretty chill time in Sector 6, and it was nice to get back into it. Reaching the second reactor was a bit of a journey, but I had just spent so much downtime with the Avalanche crew that I was looking forward to putting Tifa and Barrett through their paces. You warm up, you cool down. You speed up, you slow down. It's what RPGs do, and I think the pacing's fine when you're comparing it to Persona 5 or Xenoblade 2. But still, let me be devil's advocate because I don't think it's all perfect. That sewer level I'm defending? They make you go through it twice for the story, and that second visit is a complete waste of time. They invent this scenario where Leslie, a character who works for Don Corneo, decides to recruit the heroes so he can get revenge on the sleazy mob boss. The enemies are the same, the layout is only slightly different, and you even face off with Abzu, the exact same Rancor monster that you already battled when you first came to this place. The ultimate resolution is that we learn Leslie's backstory, and then Corneo gets away. Really? You couldn't save this storyline for a much more interesting quest in Part 2? Also, it is such a dick move to make us replay a dungeon, reach the door that Corneo's in, and then have some monster come out of nowhere to swipe the key and make everything longer. This is not optional. Every time you replay the game, you have to do this. There are some things that feel fine on your first playthrough, but redoing the game on hard mode really puts things into perspective. The Shinra Tower especially feels like it's doing way too much. It starts off requiring you to get a key card for both the elevator and the stairs. So we have a 5-minute sequence where Tifa starts climbing the scaffolding and chandeliers in order to get into the security kiosk. The music's fun and Tifa's a queen, but it doesn't really forward the plot. And whenever you do this on repeat playthroughs, you'll still have to climb through this again and again and again. Which is interesting because you're allowed to skip the motorbike sequences anytime you replay those. After ascending, you then have to sit through a Shinra tour guide in order to update your security card, something that didn't happen in the original. I do think it's a clever way of showing what each Shinra executive is all about, But again, you can't skip through it, and on repeat playthroughs, it just means standing at the door, waiting for the recording to stop talking. Then when it comes time to spy on these guys, really? Do we actually have to follow Cloud's every waking movement in the vents, turning at the right corners and finding materia in there? Solid Snake would tell this guy to get a move on. I also personally wasn't a fan of how slow-going the drum was, because Hojo's got this very video-gamey dungeon underneath his lab that you need everybody to go through. So that means constant PHS calls, always waiting for Red 13 to flip some switches, and trying to open 4 or 5 different locks, and it's like, dude, I want to catch up to Sephiroth and Genova, can we get a move on, please? And then there's the boss gauntlet, and while I greatly enjoy the action here, I would have preferred that they cut the Genova battle and saved it for part 2, because the ending is just a giant revolving door of boss fights. From President Shinra's death to the end credits, it must take almost 2.5 hours. Seriously. So like, I'm generally fine with the pacing of the game, but it could definitely speed things up every now and then. So before I get into the ending proper, I did want to make a quick list of things I liked and disliked about this title. Number 1, Avalanche. I love the personality they gave each of these 3 eco-terrorists. From Wedge's love of cats, to Biggs helping out with the orphanage, to Jesse being, extra.
So, you know Tifa, right? It's not really my business, but are you guys close?
This girl has so much sass and personality this time around. The character has always had a crush on Cloud, but she was never this blatant about it. She wants that dick, and she's not afraid to let you know it.
Mind coming over tomorrow night? My roommates should all be out for a while.
Are you seriously that desperate?
But at the same time, they really flesh out her character. There's this fantastic mission just before the second reactor where Cloud helps the crew acquire some bomb parts. On the way, you actually stop by Jessie's family's place on the upper plate, learning of how her father got fucked over by Shinra and developed Mako poisoning. And I don't know, there's something about the peaceful music and walking through that quiet suburb that just elicited feelings of peace and wonder. Something I haven't really felt with Final Fantasy in a long time. Wedge getting shot in the ass, everybody parachuting down to Sector 7, the outlandish confrontation with new character Roche. This was honestly one of the best chapters in the game, and the fact that it's entirely new material is very satisfying.
Really sorry about your ass.
Number 2, the Wall Market. I think someone put it best when they said that the Wall Market feels like Final Fantasy merged with the Yakuza franchise. They're not wrong. I love the personality of Don Corneo's new lieutenants, Chocobo Sam, Andrea Rodea, and the profanity-filled Madame M.
You greedy bastard! Scum-sucking piece of shit-festering asshole!
In order to gain her favor, Cloud has to spend money at her massage parlor, and she greatly judges you based on how much of a cheapskate you are. I mean, in my first playthrough, I needed that money for weapons and armor, and I got horribly tortured for my insolence. But if you pay full price, I mean...
Just like this. Oh, what was that? A cry of pleasure? Is this how you like it? How about this? Or maybe this?
I love that he slowly returns to Aerith, just completely worn out and like, give me a minute. The Colosseum is fantastic. Not only is it something that I believe Don Corneo would absolutely have, it's just fun that Cloud and Aerith go in as complete underdogs. The crowd hates them, nobody's taking them seriously, but then they keep winning and it's like, holy shit, they're fucking awesome! And it tops with a fantastic boss fight against the Hell House. One of the silliest enemies in the original, a robotic house that tries to eat you, fully realized in HD as a full-on boss. And it's actually pretty challenging too, especially in hard mode when the house drops tonberries out of the doorway and summons extra mechas to help it out. Jesus Christ, use those elemental weaknesses, my friends. I love that the NPC Johnny is literally doing everything you need to do to get the best dress in the original, which of course people were wondering, will Cloud put on a dress? Is he still gonna pretend he's a woman to gain an audience with Don Corneo?
Cloud? Is that you? Oh my god, that makeup and that dress!
Nailed it, I know, thank you. Moving on.
They did it. I was skeptical, but the Mad Lads actually did it.
Not a word.
Not even one?
No,
But you're so pretty.
The Honeybee Inn being redesigned as some kind of glamorous burlesque house is kinda genius. And I love that Cloud's transformation is actually empowering. The excitement that Aerith has when Cloud is getting dolled up is just legendary. And also the friggin' dance itself! This is the kind of over-the-top weirdness that I loved about the original. Speaking of, number 3, the staircase. Like before, when you enter Shinra HQ, you can take the elevator or go up the stairs. And my god, is the stairway scene hilarious.
Another day, another struggle. Climbing stairs, so much trouble.
Number 4, the physics. Come on, tell me that wasn't awesome! Number 5, Shinra's hologram. Small detail, but I think it definitely made more sense for the president not to show up like he did in the original. I mean, at any point, Barrett could have shot the dude point blank in the face. Number 6, the mini-games. I love what they did with the second reactor's timing puzzle. That part was always kind of awkward in the original, but now with voice acting and Tifa giving countdowns, I could have done that all day. And then there are the squats, where Cloud still tests his mettle against all of these big burly bodybuilders. I like how the icons go away when the squats start to speed up. Very fun. I like that game where you try to achieve a high score by smashing boxes. I mean, this game just has tons of fun things to do, really. All of it's fun to play, great stuff all around. And finally, number 7, the bike chase. Jesus Christ, the music, the in-between animations, the thrill of blocking and countering robots. I mean, this entire sequence had me on the edge of my seat. And I love how they actually incorporated the motorball boss into it, as opposed to after the fact. Speeding up and slowing down to dodge area of effect attacks, getting in and using my super swing to take out 3 tires at once. Crank the music when you start this thing, because it is a thrill, let me tell ya. But now, it's time to move on to the negatives. Number 1, Shinra blows up the first reactor. So the opening mission is great, but then, as the heroes board the elevator and make their escape, the bomb goes off.
Where's the kaboom? There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom!
The bomb only destroys the apparatus it was attached to, making one pipe leak steam and not much else. No matter how you look at it, this is lame. Because if Jessie's bomb was a dud, then she comes off pretty bad for not preparing for this dangerous terrorist attack. But considering how adamant she is in the game that she double-checked her work multiple times, we have to conclude that it worked as intended. Which, after all those soldiers, all those mechas, the most damage they intended to do was destroying one tiny apparatus? As if the Shinra company doesn't have trillions of gil which can be used to repair it overnight. That's a pretty weak op, guys. But of course the reactor does blow up, and that's because it was sabotaged by President Shinra. He was watching the attack the whole time on security cameras, and for some goddamn reason, he decides that it's worth destroying their Mako-sucking facility just so that there would be innocent casualties and negative reception towards Avalanche. This change bugs the hell out of me. Geez, we're really gonna blow this huge furnace up? This'll be something to see. Don't you all be scared of that explosion, because the next one's gonna be bigger than that! The only thing that comes close is Jessie being surprised that her bomb was that powerful. But guess what? She immediately takes pride in it. Of course the intent was to blow up the whole facility. Pipes can be replaced. Reactors? That buys the planet some time. And you know what was great? They didn't shy away from what they had done. Innocent people did die in the original. Jessie spends her dying breath regretting the pain she's caused. There's an entire scene where Kate Sith, aka Reeve, basically lectures Barrett about it. He chastises him for using the planet's safety as justification for all the murder he's committed. Moral ambiguity, man! It's fun to have characters who do bad things and learn lessons from it.
Kill the lights, and we free up power for the gate and other stuff.
But if we go through with it, the grounders in Sector 4 will suffer.
An hour later, sun's going out for good when we blow the reactor.
I'm just saying, if it's okay to freeze out poor families for the good of the planet, then what's a little collateral damage? Seeing the mayhem and destruction in Chapter 2 would be a lot more thought-provoking if the player didn't have Shinra as a scapegoat. Number 2, Sector 7's destruction. Personally, I don't think rock and roll guitar really enhances the devastation that's being inflicted. It moves too fast, and the original ending with Shinra staring down as opera music played in the background was so much more effective. Also, Kate Sith shows up for an unnecessary cameo. This is supposed to be a really heartbreaking event, and first-time players are just going to be scratching their heads going, wait, what the hell was with that cat? You have Reeve! Just have him looking in horror from his office, god damn. Number 3, Genova's breakout. When Genova escaped in the original, it was chilling, man. The claw marks in the walls, the blood trail, all the dead people, I mean, my god, it turned into a Resident Evil game all of a sudden. Even the music choice, everything felt so off and made you realize that whatever this Genova is, it's serious business. In the remake, it leaves a purple ooze trail. That's it. I don't know, I guess I just like FF7 better when it has some edge to it. Number 4, Too Little Rufus. I alluded to this in the synopsis, but I was pretty disappointed he didn't state his goal to the Avalanche crew. Also interesting that they once again kept his existence hush-hush until the president died. This was a golden opportunity to introduce him earlier and actually give him some screen time with Daddy Dearest.
You're a soldier, aren't you? Which, of course, would mean that I own you.
Number 5, Aerial Combat. Occasionally the enemies you fight are gonna be flying around. This doesn't mean much for Barret or Aerith, but Cloud and Tifa are going to struggle. Because to physically attack them, the characters have to take giant leaps, and more often than not, they're going to overshoot, or the enemy is going to completely dodge and move away. Hell, sometimes they go completely out of bounds, forcing you to wait so you can cast magic on them. These type of enemies are infrequent, but it still feels like aerial combat needs to go back to the drawing board. And the last thing I disliked about the FF7 remake, well, it's the ending. And specifically, I have to talk about Sephiroth and the Whispers. Yeah, that's Sephiroth's introduction, about 90 minutes into the game. They definitely do not wait to build this guy up. In the original, there was a mystique to the character, you know? Everyone's always talking about how great he is. You knew he was dangerous, and you waited with bated breath at the prospect of finally confronting him. But in this game, Sephiroth pops up all the damn time, acting as a specter in Cloud's head that only he can see, making vague declarations of the reunion and growing strong and how the planet is dying and, you know. He's just such a big part now. And I kind of get why, because let's face it, Sephiroth is one of the most iconic villains ever. I mean, after Remake came out, the dude ended up in Smash Brothers. He killed Super Mario! Mamma mia!
You are too weak to save anyone.
Saying that in front of Aerith is about as subtle as a brick to the face, but hey, cute reference, I get it. The first time Cloud meets Aerith, she's swatting at air, panicking about something invisible we can't see. But when she makes contact, out comes these ghostly hooded figures. Specters which were most definitely not in the original game, so we're venturing into uncharted territory here. The ghosts scare her away and separate the duo. Later in Sector 7...
What the... You okay, buddy?
Okay, that was weird. Why did he see the plate fall? Cloud usually has flashes of the past, not flashes of the future. And there are those ghosts again. They'll just hang out in front of the screen sometimes. It's distracting.
Mine's not good for anything at all.
Whoa, 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 whoa. What was that? They just previewed Aerith's death scene. That is a blatant spoiler. What are you doing? The Whispers being this Deus Ex Machina thing that just flings people around, protects them from falling. You start to notice that everything they're doing is in service of keeping the story faithful to the original. Cloud almost didn't go to the second reactor. Cloud almost killed Reno. Avalanche almost survived. Seriously, it gets to the point where it looks like they'll actually save the day and prevent the Sector 7 plate from falling, but no, the Whispers intervene.
You have failed again, I see.
What do you mean? This game wasn't being cheeky, it was being literal. Sephiroth was genuinely saying you didn't save Aerith. So, am I supposed to assume with all of this meta commentary that this is a sequel?
You've made me more happy than you know. But whatever happens, you can't fall in love with me.
Oh my god, oh no! Eventually the characters end up in the Shinra Tower, and after Hojo almost reveals Cloud's backstory right then and there, the Whispers intervene again, leading to Aerith and Red 13 explaining what the hell's going on.
Perhaps best described as arbiters of fate. They are drawn to those who attempt to alter destiny's course and ensure they do not.
Like capital D? Destiny?
Yes, for it is the will of the planet itself.
I'm lost in a maze, and every step is taking me further from the path. Every time the Whispers touch me, I lose something, a part of myself.
So yes, in a very meta sense, the Whispers are basically fans like me. People who just want the story to stay the way it is. That's why we all wanted a remake, wasn't it? To retell that amazing story with better presentation? To give the new generation the definitive FF7 experience? But in universe, Aerith knows she's going to die. She knows! So of course she's resistant to following this timeline. And on some level, all of the characters must know. Cloud didn't cry a single tear for no reason. His body remembers. Deep down, he knows that she's a goner. But yeah, it's interesting because right after Sephiroth kills President Shinra, guess what? He adds to the body count.
Barret!
But don't worry, the Whispers save the day. Because this death was not ordained by fate. For whatever reason, Sephiroth is the wild card and the Whispers can't touch him. So they start going apeshit in Midgar until everybody reaches the outskirts of town. Sephiroth is there, and he is being as cryptic and creepy as always.
Listen, destiny comes.
And suddenly, all of the characters are given a vision of Zack. Cloud's best friend from Soldier, a character they're not supposed to know about for a long time.
Come and get it!
I'm waiting, Cloud.
He just cuts a hole in the sky, somehow, and then Aerith purifies it with light. Somehow!
Destiny's crossroads.
What will we find on the other side?
Freedom. Boundless, terrifying freedom. Like a great, never-ending sky.
Aerith stresses the importance of how evil Sephiroth is, and how he is the biggest threat to the planet, something that needs to be stopped. She knows way more than she's letting on, and seems intent on breaking the chains of fate that are keeping them in place.
Never tried to challenge destiny.
No one has! Not in a literal sense. You guys are taking this whole situation extremely well. On the other side, they find themselves facing off with a gigantic Whisper known as Harbinger. So the final boss is a giant god monster. Because of course it is. It must be made out of wet tissue paper if 4 tiny humans and their talking lion can sever this thing's body parts. But every time they do, they get flashes of the story they're leaving behind.
What the hell did I just see?
A glimpse of tomorrow if we fail here today.
Hey, what? No! That's the ending to Final Fantasy VII! It demonstrated that the planet was going to be fine, that Shinra's life-sucking machines would be abandoned in place of nature. And knowing that we have Advent Children and Dirge of Cerberus and whatnot, we know humanity's gonna be fine. So why is this bad? Was Red 13 just upset because he found out he's gonna be a father? What do you have against kids? At this point in the game, my skin started to crawl because the Whispers weren't just some justification for a new final boss. This was permanently changing the trajectory of the story. It was telling the players that everything they know is going to be challenged, that some of the key moments you were looking forward to may not happen now. Even from a story perspective, I was like, this is poorly integrated and it just feels like an obvious trap. Sephiroth wants this! He led you in here to kill the Whispers, the literal will of the planet. Gee, I wonder why. Maybe it's because he knows that he never wins. For people who spend the entire game trying to take down a company that's destroying the planet, they sure are eager to defy the will of said planet.
Bring it on, bitch.
Also, as a Final Fantasy fan, what was FF12 about? Defying the will of the gods. 13? Defying the will of the gods. 14, 15? Defying the will of the gods. I mean, what is this, a broken record? This was supposed to be different! I mean, doesn't the planet already summon kaiju weapons when it feels threatened? Does it really need destiny gods too? But whatever. Of course, our heroes managed to successfully defeat God. But at that point, Sephiroth shows up with an image of Meteor, and he sucks up all of the Whispers and gets superpowered. I think? I mean, I instantly thought of his original goal of sucking up the life stream to become a god, so I don't know. I just know that the game's not over yet. What the fuck? 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 What the fuck?
Let's finish this.
Sephiroth is the final boss of the remake. We're taking him on now. This is too soon.
He's tough.
Yeah, so what? Screw him.
As much as I'm freaking out about the story, this fight is so damn fun. I can't deny it, I'm having a blast playing this. The One-Winged Angel remix is incredible. Seeing everyone collectively take this dude on is something I've wanted to see for a long time. And yeah, it's great. It's amazing, actually.
Cloud!
So Cloud knocks the Whispers out of him. Maybe? And then the screen flashes white as we head to a familiar sequence from the original. Cloud diving headfirst into what appears to be his subconscious, where of course, Sephiroth is waiting. We enter the Omni-Slash moment. It's the same camera cuts, the same energy, but this time, Sephiroth deflects all of it. Cloud doesn't land a single blow, and this is all just amusing to our one-winged villain.
Not yet. "7 seconds till the end. Time enough for you, perhaps. But what will you do with it? Let's see."
As we ponder what the hell that's supposed to mean, we cut back to that soldier we got a glimpse of earlier, and...
Wait. Was that all of them?
Zack survives his assault! The Whispers have been destroyed throughout every single era of history, and their grip on destiny no longer exists. The Sector 7 slums are being rebuilt! Biggs is alive too! And I can bet that Wedge and Jesse aren't too far behind. Forget everything you know, expect the unexpected. Final Fantasy VII is forever changed.
I miss it. The steel sky.
And so we wait for the unknown journey to continue. The world has been remade, and that is why this is called Final Fantasy VII Remake. Sons of bitches. I've had a long 2 years to process this game's ending. One thing that still feels awkward about it is the fact that there are plenty of people who jumped into this game having never touched the original. The PS1 game has aged. Not everyone likes turn-based RPGs, so an action-packed update was always going to be more appealing. Not everyone knows the story of Final Fantasy VII. Newcomers are just going to be confused, wondering what the hell's even happening half the time. What was with that cat? Who the heck's Zack? Why do ghosts keep interrupting the story I'm trying to enjoy? How does Aerith know all of these things, and why do I know so little about the final boss I'm taking on? If the only solution is recommending people play the original, then why didn't you do that 10 years ago when everyone was going on and on about a remake? No one was asking for an episodic sequel. They wanted the game they loved to be better.
The reunion at hand may bring joy. It may bring fear. But let us embrace whatever it brings.
Oh, you cheeky fuckers. I mean, it is subversive. I understand the meta commentary. I understand the need to want to change it up so people can speculate about the sequels to keep discussion of Final Fantasy VII alive. But boy, was it a bold choice. Anything could happen now. Maybe Aerith will survive this time. Then again, maybe someone else will die in her place. Rufus saw the whispers, maybe he also saw the future where he fails. What if he acts more like the compilation Rufus and becomes an ally? Or dare I say it, a party member? Why not?
Relegated to stagehand once again. I'm starting to think I'll never have a starring role.
There's always next time.
Yes, there's always next time. When Yuffie's DLC came out, they reintroduced those awful Deep Ground characters into the canon, and so you know what that means, right? Genesis is definitely gonna come back. Dirge of Cerberus ended on a cliffhanger, and when I think of all the loose threads that the Kingdom Hearts franchise has resolved years after the fact, it just makes too much sense. They're gonna follow that up. Whatever work Genesis has to do, it's probably responsible for what's happening in Remake.
The future isn't set in stone. That's what I always tell myself.
It's just so typical of Square Enix, the company that loves to have its way with the audience. Oh, you want to replay the first 6 games in the series? Well, here you go! Exclusively on Steam and mobile phones. Hey, we made this cute Mario Kart clone, and it's got microtransactions up the ass. We just sold all of our Western properties so that we can heavily invest in NFTs! Long after the market has crashed. Hey. This is what feeds my cynicism. This is what always makes me worry. Because Final Fantasy VII Remake was so freaking good! Except for the whispers. That plot point was so badly shoehorned in, and the characters just going along with it was confusing. What if the new material is also this badly written? What if we stop focusing on environmental destruction, on feelings of loss and identity? What if the sequel focuses too much on being a multiverse fan service machine that all of the good storytelling gets lost in the shuffle? This company is always putting me on pins and needles. God damn it, why can't I quit you, Square Enix? Regardless of how I feel about the future, the game I just spent 90 minutes talking about is still incredible. It's so fun seeing this rejuvenation of the franchise. More reactions, more cosplay, more fan art. A new generation is discovering why Final Fantasy VII means so much to me. Why it's been living in my head rent-free for over 25 years. It's also comforting to know that the Cloud they love is the same Cloud that I loved. The characters were perfect, the tone was perfect, even the way the characters talked felt like the original. I don't think it's a perfect game. It definitely has pacing issues and the occasional annoying quirk. But to me, the highs are so high that the lows don't even matter. I can put up with some slow, forced walking segments if it means that I get to fight the Airbuster again. This game is so good that every sequel should be copying it. The best title Square Enix has made in 20 years, it really shows you why this franchise has endured as long as it has. If you've been watching this and you still haven't played it, what are you doing? Go pick yourself up a copy of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Everyone involved in its creation should be absolutely proud.
Ain't got nothing on me!
And with that, after 5 long years, this retrospective is over. Took a little longer than I thought it would, but hey, what can you do? Now yes, one day I'll look at Final Fantasy XVI as well as FF7 Part 2. But that's it for now. I've dedicated a lot of energy to this franchise, and while there are tons of Final Fantasy spin-offs I could highlight, it is time to move on. I want to talk about other things. I want to make shorter videos on games that aren't JRPGs, and God knows I'm sure you're sick of seeing the same topic over and over again. It's been fun, but all good things must come to an end. So why Final Fantasy? Why did I choose to highlight this series in particular? Because it's a franchise I have loved ever since I was 4 years old. Final Fantasy IV on the Super Nintendo wasn't just a brilliant video game, it actually helped me with my reading comprehension. It showed me that video games were capable of more than just high scores, it could tell a story as well as any book or movie. This series had characters I was attracted to, characters who were super cool, experiences that I could never get out of my mind. It improved my critical thinking skills through all of its party composition and boss strategies. It helped me connect with some of my friends because of how niche it was. To me, more so than any other franchise, Final Fantasy was a gateway game. Because its characters were so cool, the gameplay so easy to get into, the scope so epic and awesome, it made you want to try other JRPGs. If I didn't like FF4 and FF6 so much, I might not have given Chrono Trigger a try. I might not have been so open to seeing what Tales of Symphonia was like. It's not as intimidating as a Shin Megami Tensei, it's not as simple as a Pokemon, and I might get shit for this, but it's also not as repetitive as Dragon Quest. I like that series, but I always felt that each entry were so identical. Whereas a Final Fantasy VII is drastically different from a Final Fantasy X. It's a series that's always throwing you a curveball. I have no earthly idea what Final Fantasy XVII will be like, and that's really fun. I might be a casual simpleton for saying it, but Final Fantasy is my favorite JRPG series. And being a fan since I was too dumb to read, it just felt like a good excuse to chronicle my history with it. To show the new generation what it was like to grow up with such a fantastic series. My story is told, my history out there, I'm ready to finally close the book. It's been painful waiting for some of these videos, so I thank each and every viewer who's been here since the beginning. Thank you to the people who recommended this series, who commented so many nice things to me, and even the people who corrected me when I was definitely wrong. I knew Anima was Seymour's mother, I don't know why I kept calling it a he. I took great pride in matching every single sentence I said with appropriate footage. And considering that I've made over 18 videos, with 12 of them being more than an hour long, yeah, I'm ready to enter the Odin sleep. So again, thank you for watching. It has been a wild ride. I am the Great Clement, and until next time, toodles.